12. Into the Forest. The sun was finally beginning to set beneath the distant horizon, casting the trail towards the Everfree Forest in a cozy orange glow. The sunset was always quite the sight, one Avia seldom got to see given the hive's underground nature. As such, the changeling filly often found her gaze drifting off towards that horizon and looking at their fading star. She'd usually look away a moment afterwards, lest she get spots in the corners of her eyes. But it was breathtaking nonetheless, as well as being a suitable distraction from ruminating on the decidedly unwise action the Cutie Mark Crusaders were about to embark on. It was time to enter the Everfree Forest. For better or for worse. Already the dark forest was looming in the distance. Now Avia was closer to it than she had ever been before, and she was beginning to notice just how dark it was in there. While the rest of the world was bathed in that orange, sunny aura, the inside of the forest just seemed dark and foreboding. Almost like the light itself was being swallowed up and digested by the ancient locale. And as they got closer, the darkness just looked worse and worse to the future queen of the hive.
You girls know it's not too late to turn back, right?
The princess asked to the others.
Just go back to the library and forget all about this?
She ain't wrong, Apple Surprise concurred.
You kiddin'? It's right there.
Awesome Blitz protested.
Sure, it's a little dark. But, that's what you hornheads are for, right? Besides, Avia has the book. We know what we're doing.
Avia glanced down towards the saddlebag she wore, feeling the weight of the tome inside. She more or less knew where to go and what to avoid. They would start off by following the trail halfway up to Zikora's hut before turning off into the forest and following the map all the way to the castle of the two sisters. The same route in reverse would be used to get back before the raising of the sun by Princess Celestia, who would be arriving soon alongside her sister Princess Luna. Yes, the book was probably going to be a lifesaver. She knew to look out for poison joke and other flora with unfortunate effects to the unlucky saps who came across them. She also knew a bit more about the denizens of the forest. Manticores were unlikely to attack unless severely agitated or hungry, and their large profile made them easy to spot or hear before it would ever be a problem, meaning the best way to deal with them was simply to avoid them. Rocks would only attack prey entering a clearing, so all of those would need to be avoided. Other creatures also had a variety of ways to be either warded off or avoided altogether. But the worst of the forest's inhabitants, even if they weren't necessarily the most powerful, were the infamous Timberwolves. Pack hunters, and stealthy ones at that. They would always attack a pony upon sighting one, and given the opportunity to do so, simply for the thrill of the hunt and the potential kill. The book recommended that they should listen out for rustling leaves and glowing eyes. If the group were to detect either, they were meant to hide until the threat passed them by. Failing that, lots of loud noises had a chance of scaring the magical creatures off. And if one were to see them and failed to be intimidated, run. Just run.
Maybe we won't have to use it,
Sapphire said hopefully.
Maybe we won't run into anything at all. We'll just be in and out, and all we have to do is avoid some of the meaner plants. We would have to be a little unlucky to meet a predator,
Avia noted.
But it can happen. You'd also need to be really unlucky to get hit by a rogue lightning bolt,
Awesome Blitz said.
We'll be fine. Lightning bolts don't have teeth,
Sapphire muttered in turn, shuddering.
Since the weather isn't controlled above Everfree, aren't we more likely to be hit by lightning there over anywhere else?
Avia asked curiously. All eyes turned towards Awesome Blitz, who ruffled her wings sheepishly.
We'll be fine.
she proclaimed determinedly, though failed to sound quite as sure as she'd been previously. Great. Now lightning was added to Avia's mental checklist of things that could ruin her first Summer Sun celebration. Joy. The forest was really quite close now, the dark trees standing ominously over the group of 4 equine children in almost a warning fashion. The path they were on continued into the forest dead ahead, something that was by far the safest route through the wooded area. Perhaps the only actual safe trail, one which animals of the forest seldom breached. Avia would savor every moment they had on it before they plunged right into the deep end. They then came to a complete halt right at the forest's entrance, staring off down the long pathway ahead. Even though there was enough of a gap above the path to allow sunlight in, it was still notably darker down there than it was outside, even more so the deeper in it got. As far as they could see from the entrance, anyway.
I'm getting creeped out already,
Sapphire said in a worried tone.
And this is the safe bit,
Apple Surprise pointed out.
If Aunt Apple Bloom could walk this path as a filly, we all can.
It was just the bit after that was a little more untested. Well, there was no time like the present. Avia took a step forward and suddenly found herself beneath the first trees of the Everfree Forest. She let that information sink in for a moment, and then found herself unable to suppress a grin that came along with a childish glee that she was doing something that would make her mother very unhappy. Rebellion!
Come on, girls,
Avia said to the others, turning to face the rest of the CMC while suddenly feeling a whole lot more cheerful from the odd euphoria that came with breaking the rules.
Let's go!
Awesome Blitz was next to follow Avia inside, hopping over the borderline and standing next to the changeling nymph. Apple Surprise and Sapphire then glanced toward one another, and after an eye roll from the former, they both entered at the same time. All the Cutie Mark Crusaders were now in the forest, and they started off down the trail together. Down the pathway they trotted, deeper and deeper into the deep recesses of the legendary and equally ancient forest. As they moved forward, the density of the trees and general foliage seemed to get thicker and thicker, and the already fading light seemed to become stifled and lame, even along the general safety of the trail. That fact wasn't helped by the sun's rapid descent, and soon enough the night arrived and finished darkness's arrival. Only the stars left to provide even a modicum of light, the moon obscured by the vast number of trees around them. Around this point, Avia and Sapphire lit their horns, letting their respective blue glows reveal the surrounding area while preventing them from blindly wandering into the forest too soon. But even with them, the sheer blackness of the forest made the fillies clump together in a huddle and nervously react to every single perceived movement in the corner of their eyes. The occasional hoot of an owl and the rustling of rodents in the bushes did little to calm the 4 of them.
Where did we go at night again?
Apple Surprise asked nervously, giving off a chuckle that did nothing to hide her building terror.
Seems like a mighty big mistake, don't it?
Because Avia wanted to do research first,
Awesome Blitz replied.
Which might save our lives,
Avia retorted.
Please don't argue in the middle of the big scary evil forest,
Sapphire begged.
I don't want a dragon to hear us. Oh, dragons won't be a problem,
Avia muttered in turn.
Dragons are people. Dragons you can talk to. I'm more worried about the other things in here. Well, we're still on the trail, so we're safe,
Apple Surprise pointed out.
And I'm starting to think we should stay here.
We can't, not if we want to see the castle.
The Pegasus of the group rebuffed.
Just let's stay close, okay? Even I'm getting a little creeped out here.
Only just now? Her earth pony friend deadpanned.
Shut up, Apple Surprise.
As the two glared accusingly at one another, Avia levitated the book from her saddlebag and flipped over to the map of the forest. There was a sheet of parchment tucked inside that contained the changeling princess's own notes and diagrams made on the route to take, and she looked specifically where they would need to make a turn. And it was coming far sooner than she would have liked. Or perhaps it would be better, getting it over and done with before anything had the chance to snack on them. Maybe Avia just had to stop thinking of all the ways they could perish and instead focus on not.
We're turning right, just up ahead.
Avia informed the others, biting her lip as she did so.
We should come up to a river. After that, we need to cross it. Good thing some of us can fly. From there, it should be a straight shot to the castle.
All right, Phillies. Let's just do as Avia says.
Awesome Blitz said, stopping at where Avia had pointed out as being their turn-off point and looking off into the black.
One hoof at a time.
And then the trail was gone, and it was only the sodden and muddy floor of the forest beneath them. The trees and their thick leaves now completely covered up the sky above, leaving them only the occasional gap to glance up at the stars through. The magic of Avia and Sapphire's horns was the only thing stopping them from bumping into every tree and falling into every ditch, and at one point they barely illuminated a patch of poison joke in time before the group walked right into it. A lucky break. Too lucky for their liking. Still, they were making progress as time ticked on. And aside from the poison joke incident, they hadn't run into a single other threat the book had described to them. Sure, they did hear the occasional howl or growl coming from deep within the Everfree, but none of them ever seemed to be in their general vicinity. At the rate they were going, they could reach the castle and have a good explore, as well as get back to Ponyville with some small amount of time to spare before the celebration's climax. That was the idea, anyway. The river that Avia mentioned was found shortly after. The forest opened up a little to mark its passage, the leaves above parting just enough that the sky became visible again, though only around as much as they had been back on the trail. Fortunately, swimming was not necessary. Despite a small degree of strain to do so, Awesome Blitz and Avia took to the air and each carried Apple Surprise and Sapphire across the gap. Telekinesis from both the Changeling and Unicorn helping to lighten the load somewhat. When they landed, they took a moment to catch their breath, looking back at the slow-running river passing through the forest. It was during this time that they came to appreciate just how silent everything had become. None of them could be certain when it happened, but somewhere down the line, the chatter of distant wildlife and even the rustling of leaves in the wind seemed to have died away completely. Now only a deafening silence echoed around them, filling their ears with complete nothingness that actually made them wish for the howls and growls to return. In the moments that followed, Avia was reminded of an old saying. Be careful what you wish for. All four fillies gave a squeak of fear as a growl came from somewhere close by, all four of them huddling close together and looking outwards at all that surrounded them. The noise didn't appear to be coming from the forest ahead of them, but in fact was coming from the other side of the river. And when they looked towards the source, they saw two bright, glowing green eyes staring at them from the tree line. And then two more appeared, and another two. All in all, 6 pairs of eyes stared at them from the forest like it itself had come alive. And then, In quick succession, as all the fillies could do was watch in horror, they began to emerge into view. Canines of wood and magic, vines swirling around their bodies as their splintered teeth seemed to shine despite being made of wood. The pack of Timberwolves all cautiously moved to the water's edge, sniffing the air and glaring at the fillies on the other side.
Right. Okay.
Awesome Blitz fearfully said.
Those are Timberwolves. Real-life Timberwolves. What are they doing?
Sapphire asked.
It's okay, I think.
Avia said hopefully, reluctantly splitting from the other huddled foals and trotting to the edge of the water on their side of the river.
They can't fly, so they can't reach us. We're safe. Well, I'm mightily relieved.
Apple Surprise murmured, though didn't break away from the other two young ponies.
Can we go now? We should get to the castle.
The shivering Pegasus latched onto Apple Surprise, stuttered.
Maybe then they'd lose interest for when we need to come back this way.
Yeah, good idea.
Avia said as she watched the wolves begin to back away from the edge of the river, before turning back to her friends. Only for all three of them to give a startled scream that caused Avia to shoot back around to the Timberwolves. The magic creatures had charged forward from where they'd backed up to, and in one mighty leap, they propelled themselves over the river toward the fillies.
Run!
Avia scampered away from the river just as the Timberwolves landed on her side, barreling into the trees as she screamed, while the creatures snapped and snarled in an attempt to catch their meal. Through the trees the changeling went, not stopping as tears began to well up in the corners of her eyes, and the chitin on her face became scratched by the plant she barged through without a second thought. She could hear the wooden canines behind her, and refused to stop running as the adrenaline kicked in.
Mom! Help! Please! Avia? What's happening?
Twilight responded in a panicked tone over the hive mind, getting no reply as the filly continued to run.
Avia?
Then her hoof snagged on something, Avia releasing a bad adult word as she fell face first into the dirt and rolled into a small ditch in the ground.